What is debt? Debt is defined, simply put, as borrowing money for something that you currently afford. If that's utilizing credit cards, if that's buying a car, financing it, right? If it's a mortgage, financing a house. In either situation, you cannot afford the home, you cannot afford the car in cash, so we utilize debt to pay for it. That can be, used in a positive way to help you grow, but it also can hinder you when it comes to interest and long-term debt payments. So what is good debt? Good debt is money borrowed to invest in something that has the potential to bring you value and income long-term. In other words, it's debt that works for you, not against you. Some example of this would obviously be investing in a rental property. Is it good debt to buy a home to live in? Or is it good debt to buy a house to invest and have income, passive income being generated? Good debt would be to have a passive income generated asset, right? The house that you live in is technically not good debt. But we'll have more of that discussion when it comes to assets versus liabilities. Another good debt, is student loans, depending on how you utilize it, right? If you go to college and you get student loans to be a lawyer, to be a doctor, to be a high income generator, and you can argue that that's good debt only because you know for a fact and that the statistics state that getting out of college, you make enough money to pay it off substantially, right? It's not good debt to have student loans in the same case for a major or a profession that's not going to provide you the income that can validate you having student loans. So an example of this is this, right? Let's say I go to college and I get a master's degree or I get a PhD, and I become a lawyer. A lawyer can make, let's say a lawyer makes $250,000 a year, right? If I got $100,000 in student loans, you can argue that I chose a great profession because I make $250,000 coming out of college or, a few years after college, so that paying off my student loans is not a burden. But if I go, for general studies or social work and I do not make nearly as much money and my income is only making $50,000, $60,000 a year, you can argue that I am, it's horrible debt, right? Compared to a lawyer, compared to a doctor, compared to an engineer, compared to a tech worker. It's important to understand how to utilize debt in a positive way versus a negative way when making these kinds of decisions. So what is bad debt? Bad debt is, in my opinion, easily defined as, debt being utilized from a consumer standpoint that does not bring you any type of assets or any type of investment income that you can utilize in your future, right? A car note is horrible. It's one of the worst possible loans that you can take out because the car depreciates right when you drive it off the lot. So not only did you just lose 50% of your value of the vehicle that you purchased, but now you're paying interest on that loan for the next 4, 5, 6 years. So understand this. It's not about your monthly payment. It's about the total value of that loan all after the interest after you pay interest, after you get past that 5-year period. All right. So, a mortgage for your personal home that you currently live in is not necessarily positive good debt. It can be defined as bad debt as well as a liability. It does not generate you income most of the time. If you have a business within that house, then that could be a little different. But the home in general is not necessarily categorized as good debt from the standpoint is not bringing you income. Last but not least, most people have trouble with is credit cards. The worst possible debt that you can have when it comes to, is credit card debt. A vehicle, you can argue, can bring you income because you have to go to work. But a credit card is you just swiping the card because you want to buy things that you necessarily can't afford. And the interest on those credit cards can be up to 20, 30%. And if you don't pay off those credit cards, monthly payments or monthly balances, you're going to pay interest on on those, those balances continuously over a period of time. So we have good debt when it comes to, buying a rental property, or if it's student loans when it comes to possibly paying for a job that is giving you a ton of income. But we have bad debt when it comes to credit cards, when it comes to car notes, when it comes to your personal home. So how do you utilize good debt wisely and avoid bad debt? Here's a few tips. Borrow with a purpose. Only take out debt when it aligns with a clear financial goal, like investing in education, investing in yourself, a home, or a business. Know your number. Understand the interest rate terms, the total cost of any loan before signing the paperwork. Pay it off as quickly as you possibly can. Even good debt can become bad if you take too long to pay it off. Make extra payments when you can. And avoid impulse spending. Stay away from unnecessary purchases that lead to high interest debt. Debt isn't inherently good or bad. It's basically about the choice and how to utilize it and how we choose to go about doing it. It's important that we got to understand within the United States, we use debt for almost everything. Credit and debt are something that we have created a culture that has been built on. There are places around the world that they don't utilize debt at all. If you were to buy a house, you needed to have the cash to buy it. If you bought a car, you needed to have the cash to buy it, right? Clothes, etc. We have created this culture that's built with banks that's own you ultimately, because you finance everything with them, and you got to pay the interest on the loans. And if you don't pay it, they're just going to take it from you. So you never really own your home until you actually paid off the loan. But then you can argue if you don't pay taxes on that property, you can get that property taken from you. Same thing with a car, right? So ultimately, at the end of the day, freedom comes with ownership, asset ownership. And with freedom comes not owing anybody. So understand, it is important that we pay off the debt, that we understand the difference between good and bad debt. And the next video, we're going to have a deep discussion on what an asset is and what a liability is. We talked a little bit about it today in a different way, but let's go on the next video and let's talk about it more. I'll talk to you guys soon.